It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about back after the new year. A couple of weeks vacation, fun sun, little floating around on a boat in the Atlantic Ocean. Almost got to the Pacific as we went almost through the Panama Canal. What an incredible adventure we, the Smith family, had over this holiday. And to conclude what was a lifelong dream, a goal of the family to do this trip, I contracted COVID on the way back. So absolute high, and start off the year with a little COVID. So excuse the voice, excuse the nasally, the voice, because wow, it is kicking my behind. COVID's still no joke. And look, we tried to be like everybody else. You try to be cautious. You try to do your distancing. You try to wash your hands as much as, in fact, washed my hands in that cruise more than I've washed my hands probably my whole life. And still, probably somewhere around Colombia, we ended up getting, I think that's where I picked it up, to be honest. So over the next couple of days, sure, hopefully we'll get better. But that was my holiday. Had a wonderful Christmas. Hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. As we, take a little time to re-engage with our families, to, reunite, to re-energize, and then to refocus. And our refocusing for the new year is going to be 100% on doing the best hour we can do, and making sure that working class voters get the best information and the best thoughts possible. And, today, on the program, we talk a little bit about manufacturing, because understand, when we were in these other countries and we were talking to locals, because I didn't do a lot of the excursions that the cruise had. We went and got a cab and said, hey, take us where people live. Show us how students go to school. Show us how you go to a local market and what things are like for people who live here. And you go to these countries that are developing, and you see real desperation. You see poverty. You see struggle. And you see a gratitude, oddly enough, to the U.S. for the things that they do. And this is why I got to tell you, I like traveling, because you get different perspectives from different people when people put their guards down. We were in Costa Rica, and the guy who gave us gave us our tour, great guy, brilliant guy. I could spend hours just listening to him talk about his country, because the pride that he had for his country and the things that they do and the things that their government's doing, and the fact that they get. And he referenced this numerous times throughout the 4 or 5 hours we were with him. The fact that they get education for free as far as they can go, as far as their talents, their passions, their capabilities will take them, it's paid for. And they were very proud. He was very proud of that. And as I was thinking about it, I'm going, we've got, free public education up to 12th grade for the most part. And you've got people who want to destroy that in this country. We used to have the ability to go on as far as your talents could take you. And we allowed the moneyed interests to destroy that under the guise of, you need to have skin in the game. And I listened to this guy talk about, with great passion, the fact that they give everybody in their country, they don't spend money on military, they spend it on education. To have the best educated, best well-informed, citizenry possibly. And even talked about immigration, because every country's got someone who unfortunately is below them. And he said, look, in Nicaragua, which is just across the border, you've got desperate people who are coming here to work in the banana fields. And, the Costa Ricans don't want to do that work anymore because it's hard work and it doesn't pay well at all. But the Nicaraguans want those jobs. So they imported like 30,000, I think he said, people and said, hey, come here, pick the bananas. Your kids are going to get a free education. And the way he made it sound is that this was okay. Can you imagine if you were to suggest that here in this country? We're going to go get 30,000 Mexicans or 30,000 Costa Ricans or 30,000, doesn't name the nationality. And we're going to bring them here. We're going to have them do a job, and their kids are going to get a free education and health. Can you imagine? And my mind just kept spinning in that space of this idea that you have these poor people, and in all these countries we went to, you had people who were desperate. They were struggling. But the sense of community that you felt from them, something much different than you get here in the U.S. And it's one of those things that, I'm still processing. Now, what they also talked about is the fact that, they want to compete in making things. They want to compete in creating jobs at home. And we used to think that way. And I think we've got a president right now in Joe Biden who wants us to think that way, that we should be reshoring manufacturing. I've been saying every day since I started this program nearly 20 years ago, that domestic production for domestic consumption, we should be making what we need. And those things that we cannot make, which there isn't much, we then trade for. This idea of allowing U.S. corporations to take U.S. brands overseas to be made by children in Asian countries is ridiculous. Those kids should be going to school. They should be getting an education and building their local economies. So for me, over this kind of is the official start of the 2024 election cycle. We're now into 2024. We're now looking down the barrel of an election that could, quite frankly, decide what happens for the next 50 to 100 years. This is that consequential, I believe. All of the things that Biden has accomplished, pulling us out of this pandemic, getting our supply chains almost back to somewhat normal, and then maybe a little bit more resilient. Unemployment rates low, inflation's coming down. We are going in the right direction, but the right-wing spin machine, they just want everybody with their hair on fire. So for me, this year is going to be all about going, what kind of a country do we want in 2025? Do we want what we had, which is a dependence on China, a dependence on billionaires, a dependence on corporate America that really not good for us? Or do we want to reclaim that? I got to tell you, I'm hoping that we get some antitrust stuff popping up over this year. It's a political year. We should be doing this stuff, even if it's just messaging. But I want to hear your thoughts. It's going to be a long, interesting year, but this is going to be a big one. So I'm going to want to hear your thoughts early, often, good, bad, indifferent, something I said made you think, got under your skin, made you mad. By all means, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back with Scott Paul from the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Unions are making a comeback. More organizing in the last couple of years than in a long time. And the Biden administration being more supportive of unions than any president since FDR. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice as Americans.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry? Clean energy. It means millions of jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. And lower utility costs for families. Congress, let's get it done.
So I got to tell you, since, following some of the news coming back online after vacation, my inbox full of stories about China. Manufacturing's doing great. Manufacturing's doing horribly. Output is up. Output is down. Don't really know who to believe. Honestly, this is one of those moments where you go, exactly what are we supposed to believe? Who are we supposed to believe? Because the headlines, they tell some very bizarre stories. and just story after story, up and down. It's up, it's down. This is something I think we're going to be focusing on this entire election cycle. Manufacturing policy is going to be at the heart, center stage, and here to share some thoughts on where we're going to go and where this is going to take us. Our resident manufacturing guru / expert, Scott Paul. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. Happy New Year. It's great to be with you.
I appreciate you taking time for us. Hope you had a wonderful holiday. We did in the Smith family. Hope you and the Scott family did as well.
Yeah, I tell you what, we kept it in America, but about as far away as you can get in Hawaii. It's as I told you, it's hard to screw up a vacation there. So I felt very blessed, very fortunate, rested, recharged, ready to rock and roll in 2024.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But this is going to be something I'm sure you and I are going to talk about from now till Election Day. Manufacturing policy. The winners, the losers. Are we on the right path? Are we on the wrong path? I know the Biden administration, they're going to make a huge push at saying, look, this is why you reelect us. We're bringing manufacturing back. We're going to make America great by making things in America. That's going to be their pitch. But what do you make of these stories coming out of China, especially with the most recent admission by Xi Jinping acknowledging that the country's having a tough year? They're having a tough year with people struggling to find jobs, meet their basic needs. This is housing. This is a huge admission by the president in China. What do you make of this?
Yeah, that is a pretty big admission by Xi, because they want to generally present happy news to the populace and to the world. But I would say that this is not surprising in that a lot of China's growth and a lot of the stability that Xi has sought to bring out, and obviously there's violent aspects to that too, but the nonviolent aspects are the product of, I think, what we would call like financial instruments or things that we would consider to be problematic. Like a real estate bubble, for instance, or building a lot of housing or other developments that will never be occupied because they need to keep the construction industry busy. I mean, that's one example, and the list goes on and on. But with respect to factories, and I think this is a big deal, Rick, is that you've seen a couple of things happen over the last year. Chinese exports to the United States are definitely down. And so there's some impact there. There is a generally slower growth in China than there had been. And so there's some weakness there. And then, in a lot of ways, the Chinese Communist Party has run out of its first bag of tricks on how to prop up the economy with the real estate bubble and the financial sector and what have you, and so there is this acknowledgement that there could be some rough seas. Now, what I'm looking out for, and I will say this, and it's first worth pointing out that even despite all of that, China is still the world's largest manufacturer by far, and so whatever happens there has a big impact on the rest of the world, and especially the United States, because we consume a whole lot of stuff here. And what has traditionally happened if there's some weakness in China is that the Chinese Communist Party will seek to export its problems. And so they'll keep the manufacturing going, they'll keep the factories going, maybe not as fast as they had, but they'll keep them going. And instead of selling the stuff locally, they'll dump it on the global market wherever it's able to go. And that has devastated the United States in the past. That exacerbated the Great Recession that we had. We also saw a lot of that at the beginning of the pandemic. And so, we can't let that happen. And the good news is that we do have some tools in place now some tariffs and what have you that will make it a little more difficult to do that. But you were right to have your eye on what's happening in China and what Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party does with the economy there. And also, I'll just throw one other thing into the mix. What's going to happen with respect to their reaction to the upcoming election in Taiwan, where there is definitely one candidate that is more about an independent Taiwan and another one who wants a little closer relationships with Beijing. And so there'll be a lot going on there. And as you rightly point out, this will have a big impact on what Biden is going to be telling voters about his changes and transformation to the economy to make it better, more sustainable, more resilient, with better jobs. And so all of this is swirling around right now.
Yeah, I was just reading through some of their literature a little bit ago, and they pointed out in their literature that in 2023's third quarter, real inflation adjusted private manufacturing construction investment reached the highest level on record since 1958. Now, clearly, they're going to say this was because of our policies. This is because of the Inflation Reduction Act, the investments we're making in infrastructure and all of that stuff. And quite frankly, it is because of that. Also because, we've said, look, we've got to get some manufacturing back. We can no longer be the consuming economy. We've got to make stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is that combination. It is the combination of the policies and the public investments that are being made. And it is like basically having, three highly effective pharmaceuticals running through the manufacturing economy at the same time. The infrastructure law, the CHIPS Act for semiconductors, and also the clean energy manufacturing. So you have all of that pushing investment. At the same time, you have some, not all, but some corporate boards saying for the first time that they care as much about resilient supply chains as they do about finding the lowest cost. Now, there's still going to be that seeking the lowest cost there, but they at least want to hedge their bets.
Right. No, but here's the thing. Have we not heard that before? I seem to remember, and I still remember the date. I think it was August 19th, 2019. The Business Roundtable came out with their edict that they learned. They've now learned. It's no longer about only shareholder value. It's about, how did that go again? It's about customers. It's about communities. It's about workers. Yeah, it's about workers. And then they had the pandemic to prove, what they were saying. And they went back to what they really believe. So I got to tell you, not buying that until I see it.
I totally agree with you that is a PR and marketing effort. I do think that a management best practice now for people that care about supply chains and being able to have reliability and quality and all of that, that some companies are making those investments in the United States again. I mean, there was one story that appeared over the holidays about, and this is remarkable, like an electronics manufacturer that makes some components for Apple and other companies that's going to move a massive amount of production out of China and India and into the United States because they can control the quality, they can control the materials, they don't have to worry about the shipping as much. And right now, this is an anecdote, right? This is an outlier, but I do hope that it becomes much more of a trend as we look.
Yeah, and they can also control their intellectual property. I mean, do you remember that? Remember for a bunch of years, corporate America was crying about theft of intellectual property rights. And I was telling you, and you were saying the same thing. There is a country that will protect your intellectual property right here. You make it here, you do it here, you're going to be okay. You go over there and you give them your secrets, you give them your technology. Don't be surprised when they steal it.
Yeah, not only that, and this is, boy, I'm going to get on my soapbox now, but it's like these companies It's like in the United States, they expect intellectual property protection. They expect the rule of law. They expect an educational system that's going to churn out great graduates for them. They expect a training system. They expect a high quality infrastructure. They expect stability, political stability, and economic stability and certainty because of the Federal Reserve and other things in the United States. They expect all of this, but they have no loyalty back to the United States when it comes. Where do they put their jobs? And they make all of these demands of the government when they themselves are not willing to necessarily practice what they preach. Some of them do. Look, some of them do, but most of them do not. And so, but I do think that the reality of the pandemic, the instability in China, the clarity that China is a competitor and not a collaborator, is causing some thinking. And so, if you were to go to McKinsey or Bain or any of these other management consultancies now, they actually would say, well, you know what, there's probably a way we could make this work in the United States or close by, right? When before they would have said, you got to go to China. And so it's a little bit of a change. We got a long way to go, but the public investment is driving a big piece of this and making sure, this is the thing, making sure that it's durable. The clean energy manufacturing incentives are durable. The semiconductor manufacturing incentives are durable, are going to be very important because these are long-term investments that have to be made in the United States. And also that we're creating quality jobs.
Yeah, and this is why elections have consequences, because all of this stuff, and this is what I keep telling people, all of this stuff that Biden's done, all of these investments, all of this future thinking investments that are being made could all be undone with one presidential election. And I think that has to come out because, look, if you want to have a manufacturing base, if you want to have that supply chain that is resilient and is domestic, the other guy talked about it a lot, didn't do much about it. This guy's not talking about it very much, but actually he's doing it. And I think that's the important part, getting some stuff done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't do this. And there is a perfect recipe to create good manufacturing jobs in the United States. Part of it involves an aggressive trade policy. Part of it involves that public investment, that industrial policy. Part of that involves making corporations accountable to have quality jobs that pay better wages. Okay. So, Trump did one out of those three, but that's not enough. That's not necessary or sufficient. You got to do all three. And if you say my policy is a 10% across the board tariff, but I'm going to get rid of all this other stuff, that is not going to be helpful.
Yep.
Not going to be helpful in any way.
So last line of questioning I've got for you on this, and this is kind of a loaded question, because I'm looking at what Xi Jinping is saying, that the people in his country can't meet their basic needs, their housing, the jobs. Does this become a trade war in these next several months? And does this have to be a I win, you lose scenario? Or do we see chaos in the coming months to the election? I'm curious if you look into your crystal ball, what do you see?
Yeah. Man, it is so hard to predict China, other than the CCP will always act in the interest of self-preservation. That's the only standard. And what I think I have a concern about is that, again, I think that their bag of tricks, financial bubbles, housing bubbles, those are kind of gone now. And so, how do they navigate through this? Is going to be really, really challenging for the party to maintain that sense of stability, and the spillover that's going to have on their neighbors and going to have the United States. This is something that we got to keep an eye on, and we have to get ahead of, because we can't just let a surge of Chinese imports come back in as we're starting to rebuild manufacturing in the United States, or let them through the back door, like let Chinese auto companies set up in Mexico and make their cheap cars there,
or sell everything over these apps.
Yeah.
I mean, they've gone around our trade policies, and they're doing direct to consumer stuff.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't expect Biden to not be tough on China headed into the election. I think that's almost a certainty. So, but but there's a lot there's going to be a lot of touch points, Taiwan, the economy, all of that as we look ahead as well, Rick.
Well, we'll see how it plays out, and I'm sure you'll be here to help us work through it. Scott Paul, I appreciate the time.
I'll look forward to it. Thanks for having me on, Rick. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Paul. I want to hear your thoughts. What are you going to be looking for in the coming year? Is this going to be a central theme, something that we should be paying attention to? I want to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
I got to tell you, manufacturing, that's going to be the big thing. And as we were talking about with Scott Paul a second ago, this is going to be a big issue in this election. And I think for Biden to do well in November, this has to be what gets talked about. The fact that we are reshoring manufacturing, the successes, the right's going to try to, see, there's another failure. On the big screen, on the big, in the big frame of things, the fact that, as I said, since 1958, the largest investment in private investment in manufacturing in this country, that is kind of a big deal. And they've got to be hammering on that. Now, of course, Trump and company, they've got to make it a clown show. They've got to make it chaotic. They've got to make it about the distraction, not about what's actually not getting done, not about the jobs that are being created. The fact that they're doing this stuff and mandating that things are done with project labor agreements, and that union rights are being respected, that the jobs that are being created are good, family-sustaining wage jobs that are going to help communities thrive. If that doesn't get talked about, we got problems. And that's got to be where the focus is. You go back to the Carville thing. It's the economy, stupid. It's always the economy, stupid. And hammering on the fact that jobs are being created, that we are putting people into good career jobs, not just McJobs, not just the Amazon kind of job where you come and you go. The turnover rate's astronomical. The injury rates are astronomical. The stress levels are through the roof. No, this is where they've got to spend a lot of focus. This is for sure. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. For those folks watching on our free speech channel, we'll see you back here tomorrow night. Folks listening on the radio, gonna take a quick break. Right back after this.